gonna have a roundtable now. You guys want Bryan? You want to come up? Sam, Peder? We're gonna be having just a couple minutes of discussion about adoption of MCP in a specific industry. We thought this would be a useful moment to kind of go through what it's like to take this technology and actually try to use it in areas that are regulated, areas that have high security requirements. So we're gonna kick off this section with a handful of just a kind of a short conversation, about 20 minutes, on the financial services sector, which has been an area that typically is not the fastest to adopt brand new technologies, but in this case is moving pretty quickly. So guys, do you want to maybe just start by introducing yourself, talking a little bit about your role at your company, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Bryan Godwin. I'm CTO at Evergreen Wealth. We're a online digital investment advisor, and we help affluent families build their wealth.
Hi everyone, I'm Sambhav. I'm the head of AI productivity at Bloomberg. Sean spoke a bunch about what we do and how we are using agentic AI. What my group specifically focuses on is making it fast and safe to deploy our AI systems to production.
Hi, I'm Peder. I'm a principal developer at Saxo Bank. We're an investment bank, and we specialize in online trading and investment. And I build all kinds of AI systems, internally and externally facing.
Thanks, guys. And as we have talked about already, this MCP is pretty new. We're 10 months in. This is not a technology that's been around. But I know in setting this up, all of you inside of your organizations are already adopting it, and you're using it today. Would you mind just giving a little bit of an overview of how you guys came to using MCP and what you're using it for and why you see it as critical going forward? Start with you, Peder?
Yeah, well, actually, I got interested in MCP right from the start when I saw the announcement, because this is what we've been needing, something to tie all the awesome data and all the awesome systems and all the deep domain knowledge that we have in the bank, tie that together with our AI systems. So we're building both indirectly client-facing MCP servers, and we're using MCP servers for boosting productivity. And yeah,
I can go next. So I talked a bit about our MCP journey in the last MCP Dev Summit, but primarily inside the organization, we have seen adoption in 3 areas. The first one, which is probably the most mature, is using MCP as like a plug-and-play layer to build our own AI systems. I think MCP has provided to agentic systems the same thing like HTTP did to the web. People could build their websites, and you could have a handful of clients, which were the browsers, and you could easily use and connect to all of these websites. So the same way MCP and primarily tools within MCP have enabled our agentic systems to connect to the vast array of services and data we have available internally. The second one is obviously developer productivity. That started out a bit late in Bloomberg, but it's shot up like crazy, and that's like bread and butter for MCP. And finally, I think the most area where we are seeing early adoption is direct exposure of MCP servers to clients and vice versa. I think there's a lot to be done for our industry to be comfortable with exposing these servers directly in terms of how we can provide guardrails and appropriate access control around these MCP servers, versioning, change management, etc. So I think that's the area that's probably is the least mature of the 3. So that's how our adoption has been going.
For us, a key part of our service is we call Evergreen Intelligence, which is our AI advice engine, which combines our knowledge base, real-time data from various sources, as well as an individual's continuously updated, personalized financial information in order to provide on-demand financial advice. And so internally, the way that we're doing that is we've built our own MCP gateway that we use to connect to a variety of these different data sources and information, as well as our clients' external accounts that they may link in order to give the LLM the ability to pull all this information together and give very detailed, comprehensive, and accurate answers to their questions.
It's interesting to hear you say that, Bryan, because as a startup, it's a little bit earlier in your journey than, say, Saxo Bank, which has been around for, I don't know, Peder, how long has Saxo Bank been around?
Oh, a long time.
Long time, right? You're pushing these solutions out to customers pretty quickly. Like you're moving solutions that are AI enabled in your customers' hands, and they're backed by MCPs. And I know just from talking to a lot of organizations, they're probably not quite there yet. And I think that's pretty typical for technical adoption. I'm kind of curious for, maybe for Sam and Peder, especially in larger organizations where you've had to go and talk to your security teams and your compliance teams and, had to have them sort of assess risk around this technology. How have those conversations gone? What have those teams come back to you with as questions, recommendations, and anything you can share about that? I know the regulatory requirements you're under as an investment bank must be massive.
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. So that's a conversation that's not done yet. And I think the perspective that I usually try to convey is that MCP is a protocol. We still need to build services and infrastructure that is secure, that is compliant, that doesn't change, right? So as long as MCP has OAuth support, it has all these things that we need to build industry-grade security, then we already know how to build secure services. And that's kind of the angle that we need to take. And MCP doesn't undermine security. It just adds a way to do what we're already good at.
Sam, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think MCP specifically would have probably a couple of years given all of our CISO team a heartache. Like they were like, "What the hell are you doing?" Like the fact that it can lead to like these non-deterministic systems, which LLMs access all this data, which the user may or may not be entitled to. A good example is like, even if you are within like, let's say one like financial institution, maybe your front office can access some data that your back office should absolutely not have access to. So when you're actually accessing this data through an agentic or chat application, like sharing entitlements, they have to be carried throughout the call along with the user identity, not just the agent that's talking to the actual MCP server. So there are some interesting challenges in the just authentication authorization space in terms of how you carry forward that identity, how you make sure entitlements are retained throughout the life cycle of how the data is exposed and used. So it doesn't just stop at like the MCP server returning the data, but also how it's then further used to derive answers. For things like compliance, when you're redistributing data, you have contractual limitations, which is a very different legal boundary than copyright law, and it's not as ambiguous. You know exactly what you're contractually obligated to and whether you're in compliance or not. So things like citations, attributions, they're not just prompts you can put in and hope that the LLM complies by it. You need to guarantee that. So things like that are good examples of how security and compliance play into how MCP servers and how agents really can be used in our industry. It's just a surface of the kind of problems we have to deal with.
I would just say in our specific application, where we're using MCP as internal tooling only, right? We're not exposing this functionality, the MCP directly to our end users. And so, from that perspective, MCP as a technology is really not any different than any other API integration technology. We've got a zero trust, least privileged architecture. We treat the LLM, all the LLM generated content is treated as untrusted. Our security model is we never give the LLM access to session tokens or any information like that. And then from that perspective, you mentioned, as a startup, we're very early in. We found that we could get really fast velocity using MCP to connect to a variety of resources. And as this internal technology, it worked really, really well for this use case.
I think that's really interesting because in just the broad set of conversations we're having out there with people adopting MCP, there do seem to be, a set of organizations that are really looking at MCP as an internal protocol that's going to allow them to kind of build better agents. But there are organizations, I would say, that are a little further along that are seeing MCP as a front end potentially to put maybe not necessarily in the hands of all their clients, but maybe in the hands of their partners or certain types of clients, more access to back-end data quickly so that those organizations can build intelligent agents. And so it's interesting that, sometimes MCP is the internal layer, sometimes it could be the external layer, and it probably changes a little bit your security posture. And it sounds like that's part of what you guys are using is internal first is where a lot more comfort is. You can kind of lean on your existing security processes. External is sort of a second question because there you don't have control over the system prompt. You're not sure what the user is doing and where they're taking it. I want to talk more about just from a development perspective of the spec. As the spec has grown and improved, I think we've seen lots of great releases. There's another release coming in November that we're all excited for. What are some of the things on the roadmap and the direction? I know, Sam, you've talked about this quite a bit and are quite active in the Discord on these topics. What are some of the things you're excited to see and the sort of enhancements that you're counting on? And, maybe you can start us off and anyone else can jump in if they'd like.
Yeah. I think, at least in the last version of the spec, one of the things we were really excited about was structured outputs, mostly because it makes it easy for us to verify what's coming out of MCP servers. And like if we want a certain shape and form to the outputs, that's great. I know typically with tools and MCP servers, you want as much flexibility as possible so the LLM can interpret the response in natural language. But having structured output is how we had originally developed our protocol that existed before MCP, before we switched to MCP. So that has really helped us move from our original protocol to MCP. That was one big thing. Of the new features, I'm really excited about things like long running and async tools and workflows, especially for our agentic use cases. And then there are a lot of, I think, things that would be useful not just in the financial domain, but for everyone. Another one that I would be really excited to see more activity and movement on is some sort of agent or model awareness for the tool outputs. So being able to customize the tool descriptions, the tool input parameter descriptions and outputs based on the LLM that's interacting with it. And being able to pin or version manage these things in some way, mostly because when you're shipping these systems in the financial industry, you want more control over the output, and like any change has to be vetted, approved before it can be rolled out. So things like dynamically changing the tools that are available, the outputs that are available are desirable maybe from like a developer experience perspective where you have a remote server that can just change things on the fly. But they're not as desirable when you're shipping production agents that need to do exactly a set of things, and you need to have very good evaluation systems to check whether they're conforming to the basic set of tests that you expect them to conform to.
Yeah, all of that, and also statelessness. Like as many of you probably know, if you need to scale MCP, then you don't just want one physical MCP server, you need to be able to scale to a lot, and then you don't want to have a lot of state. So we want to be able to basically connect any client to any MCP server and not have to worry about any stickiness or anything like that. So anything in the transport layer and in the protocol that can move us closer to that is great. And also some of the suggestions for having a HTTP only version of the protocol, that's really great because it makes the whole security and compliance conversation easier if we're building this very strictly on existing REST API technology. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I would say an area where we've got an interest is in observability or around as you. We found that you can greatly impact the results that you get by just minor changes in like tool descriptions or the metadata that you provide. The LLM around what tools are available and how they work. And then, having quantitative ways that you can measure the impact of your changes so that you can make sure that you're actually improving performance and not decreasing. Like those types of things would be very welcome additions.
Awesome. I know we're almost out of time. Maybe you guys can wrap us up with just a little bit of advice, as for everyone else out here whose organizations maybe haven't kind of jumped as quickly or as fast, as deeply into the MCP ecosystem as yours have. A little bit of advice, and then Sam, I think you have some news you wanted to share as well.
Yeah. So I know we spoke a lot about general spec enhancements, but what I've been seeing again and again, and Sean spoke about this earlier, is that you're seeing other financial institutes build layers on top of MCP to make sure that MCP can work in settings such as ours. And maybe not all of those things belong in the core spec, but there's definitely a need for consistency, interoperability amongst financial services industry. So I'm very happy to announce that we are starting a financial services interest group under the MCP open source project. You can find more details on the README in the MCP organization. It's called Financial Services Interest Group, the repository name. We'll be kicking off our first meeting next week on Thursday. And it's really just an effort to bring this community together so we can use technology like MCP in our industry appropriately. So I would love if there are folks and representatives from the financial services industry to come join us on Thursday and advocate for these kind of changes.
Yeah, and also something that we found success in is that you can write MCP servers in anything. There are tons of really good SDKs out there. I have a particular bias towards the C# SDK, but internally we have a lot of C# developers, and being able to have them write integrations with AI systems without being Python experts, that's really great. So educate your people and get them going, because there's so much talent out there that can write awesome stuff if they just get the chance.
I would say as you're working on building usable systems, be very judicious around tool selection and tool use, the tools that you're adding to your system. The tool descriptions have a huge impact, and invest in the tooling to do evals so that you can measure performance. Those are the learnings that we've had.
Fantastic, guys. This was great. I really appreciate you sharing your journeys this early in the ecosystem. 10 months in, it's incredible to have these kind of companies up talking about real adoption and where they're at. Thank you again.